Video games. It's pretty wild to think about, but video games are still a pretty new form of media. The first Doom game was released only about 28 years ago, and my baby, the PlayStation 2, is now an adult. And yet, gaming has changed over the course of its lifetime. Some of it's pretty fantastic. No one is complaining that graphics have become too nice looking and that we should go back to trying to fit games into file sizes 625 times smaller than the file size limit on Gmail. But there's been a lot of really bad developments recently in the world of how should companies make money from their games. Because games have risen in things like staff numbers, graphical fidelity, audio fidelity, animation. There's a lot that goes into games, and the cost has only gotten greater over the years for those big AAA games. Interestingly enough, for shooters or other big multiplayer-driven games, it's become more commonplace to actually make them free. If you want to populate a big multiplayer world, you need lots of people to play. And around 15 years ago, games were all about creating experiences for players that were really good to play, and then complete, and then buy the next game. And that still happens, but what if you were to keep playing the same game for as long as you can? I want to talk about some of the most egregious forms of monetization pushed to players today, where they came from, how they've mutated to the point where the entirety of the actual game portion doesn't even matter, and how companies emotionally and psychologically manipulate players into spending as much money as they can on the same product that they already have. It's all Valve's fault, actually. Okay, not really. I love Valve. They're a great company. They're an independent studio that has made some of the best games ever made. Half-Life 1 was a monumental step forward in telling an actual story through a sequence of challenges and puzzles in a linear fashion. Portal and Portal 2 are absolutely great puzzle games with a great story, and Team Fortress 2 invented loot boxes. On October 10th, 2007, Team Fortress 2 was released at an asking price of $20. However, it wasn't until June 23, 2011 that the game switched from a pay-to-play model to a free-to-play model. That means that even today, you can enjoy Team Fortress 2 for free. But how has Valve been able to keep it running for so long? If you play mobile games, then you're no stranger to the concept of microtransactions. The entire mobile game market is predicated on the idea that games are free to download and then use ads or microtransactions to make their money. Well, for TF2, they added cosmetics. These take the form of hats, jackets, pants, just about anything. Over the course of about 10 years, the game has added so many cosmetics that you can customize the mercenaries to look completely unique. You can acquire these cosmetics in a number of ways. 1. Opening crates. As you play the game, you will receive drops for the current cosmetic case. This will show you all of the items that are possibly inside and the rarity of those items. And after spending $2.50 on a one-time use key, the box will open and it'll show you what's inside. But what if there's something specific that you want? Option 2, the Steam Community Market. This is where players who have items that they don't want can sell them to other players. If you're looking for one specific hat from the collection, it's usually cheaper to get it from the market rather than opening crates. Number 3, because items can be moved from player to player, you can trade for items. This can be done by visiting a trade server and looking for someone who has the item and trade with what's called scrap metal or the keys from earlier. Scrap metal can be earned from playing the game by combining it with the weapons that you don't need anymore. And so the Team Fortress 2 economy was born. And if you're in the know about item rarities and modifiers, you can actually make real money from TF2 by buying low and selling high. And because of this economy, TF2 can never die. Many people have backpacks worth thousands and even tens of thousands of dollars in digital items. Also, Valve created one of the first ever battle passes for the Dota 2 championship in 2013. What is a battle pass? Battle passes are long-running events where players typically do challenges to earn levels to earn rewards. You have a free pass up top and a paid pass down below where you can get like a little bit of stuff and then like a lot of stuff depending on whether or not you'll pay for it. Interestingly, usually in the paid pass, there's enough Monopoly money in order for you to get the next one. So you buy one and then you play enough to get to the end and then save up your funny money, and then you can get the next one where you'll want to play enough to get to the end, and then so on and so on. All the while, the in-game store will tempt you to spend your digital currency, so that way when the next battle pass comes around, you won't have enough and you'll have to pull out the credit card. However, it was Fortnite Battle Royale that really popularized the idea of it, and ever since 2017, other companies have been cramming them into just about any game. Again, monetization structures are usually completely isolated from the game itself. One more game that I want to draw attention to is a game called Apex Legends, which released on February 4th, 2019. And it is a fantastic game. But in terms of monetization, it's got it all and it's got it bad. Loot boxes, battle passes, in-game store with rotating items, skins for skins. That's right. Skins that are specifically meant for certain items. If you own the original skin, you can buy the recolor with the currency you get from leveling up, but if you don't, it's going to cost you the equivalent of $18 worth of Apex coins. Now, skins are a little different than TF2's cosmetics. While they both change the look of a character, skins are more of a palette or full model swap from the standard. You can't customize it any further than just simply equipping it. Skins are the most common form of cosmetic customization, as it's easy to implement and develop further. However, unlike the modular system in TF2, you won't feel as special for owning a legendary skin when you see someone running the exact same one. Also, collection events. What's a collection event? It's where limited time cosmetics get added to the game, and you can't get any of them for free unless you've saved up enough crafting material, which, surprise, drop from loot boxes. Also, if you purchase all of the items, which will run you about $170, you'll get specific character melee weapon called heirlooms, and since the game's launch, we've had 8 collection events. But what if I want to get the heirloom after the event is over? Great question. They drop from loot boxes and they are the rarest item. However, they are guaranteed to drop every 500 loot boxes. You stop getting free loot boxes once you hit level 500. How much does it cost to open 500 boxes? $430. Also, if you're just that willing to burn all your money, if somehow you own all of the heirlooms, you can no longer earn heirloom shards from boxes anymore. There are 9 currently available and 16 characters in the game, so it's safe to assume more will come. So, we've looked at how invasive this monetization practice has become, but how does this actually affect players? Well, everything we've looked at so far is very skin deep. And the thing is if you're a big company looking to run an online game, you have to spend money on things like server costs, game maintenance, and new content drops. Just because someone bought the game doesn't mean you'll be able to keep servicing them years down the line. So what can you do? Well, you can't sell people things that affect moment-to-moment gameplay, because selling someone a weapon that is objectively better creates an unfair advantage, generally referred to as pay to win. What if you sell people new maps for them to play on? Well, yeah, that can work. But the people who don't buy it can't play with those who have, which means that you've split the player base, meaning that players will have to wait longer for a match to play with other people. So what if you just sell people things that makes their experience look different? Well, if you're selling skins, all you have to do is make a system that can display them and keep track of which ones players own, and then just do nothing other than have your art department keep making new ones. The thing is that's just not as simple as that. In order to persuade players to actually buy the skins, companies have to create a culture of has and has not. Not only can other players' skins be seen in game, but usually they will be promoted or given extra emphasis during gameplay. Players who invest more money into the game will likely be the ones who are willing to invest more time into the game, which creates a culture that idolizes the best skins as a token of superior skill. Players who own the best looking and most expensive gear, even if it's completely cosmetic and does not change gameplay, usually consider themselves better players than those who can't afford to spend incredible amounts of money. And because these games are constantly being updated, the status quo of fashion is always changing. Yesterday's skins are old news, and if you aren't willing to sink the money, then you must not be willing to sink the time to get good at the game. Even the term default, meaning the standard look of the character, while functionally identical to every other skin, has become an insult amongst players. Also, every skin that gets added to the game is for a limited time to try and instill FOMO, or fear of missing out. Everything that is standard within the game has to be earned through loot boxes, which is just gambling. You put money in, you see a bunch of flashing lights, and you hope for the best. Did you know that the people in charge of making these decisions hold conferences about how to best utilize these strategies on players? They have terminology for players that spend way more money than other players. Those people are called whales and super whales. The kinds of people who will spend thousands or tens of thousands of dollars on these games. These systems are intentionally created to affect the kinds of players who have addictive spending or gambling habits. I jumped on the Overwatch bandwagon in 2016 after playing TF2. I had spent some money on TF2, but not a ton, and usually when I wanted a certain item, it would tend to be pretty cheap on the community market. For Overwatch, I spent nearly $240 on that game, and that's not including the game itself, which I bought the $130 collector's edition of, which is a whole other scam in and of itself. A friend of mine has told me that he has spent somewhere between $250 to $300 on Apex. But considering the egregious price tags on the stuff in-game, it's not hard to find people online who have spent thousands of dollars on their accounts trying to collect as many skins as they can. And in a game like Apex that encourages you to collect absolutely everything they offer, how much would that cost you? We ran the numbers, and if you wanted to get every base character and weapon skin, plus the finisher animations and the weapon charms, you would have to spend $500 on loot boxes. Now this doesn't include things like banner frames, special poses, voice lines, holo sprays, special editions of the game, or emotes. Or even the special skins that you get for having an Amazon Prime account. Now for you and I, it may seem silly to own all the skins, especially since you can only use one at a time. But for publishers like EA who own Apex Legends, the real money isn't in players like you or I. It's in the players who will spend all of their money because the option is simply there. So what can be done about all this? Well, we have the ratings board, which classifies which games are suitable for which audiences, and the ratings board puts little disclaimers about what's in each game. So if a game releases with loot boxes, then it should have that on there, right? Yeah, they thought that was a good idea too, which is why they added it to part of their labels in 2020, 3 years after the biggest loot box controversy went down. All right, sure, they were late to the punch, but it helps, right? No, because games are becoming more and more online, publishers can ship their games without in-game transactions and then add it in later after you've shipped out all your physical copies. Bonus, reviewers will have talked all about how there isn't any garbage monetization at launch. The thing is, the systems in place don't have to be this way. If you download Apex Legends right now, you have all the skins on your computer because your game has to be able to display them on other people to you. And all you're paying for is for someone to flip a switch that says you own it. A company doesn't have to keep spending money to sell the skins once they've already been made. It's not like buying shoes where a company has to pay for the materials and the labor to create them, and then every time they want to sell the pair of shoes to distribute them to other places. This is creating digital art that gets made once and then copied infinitely. A company could release every one of their skins for free to players, and there would be no cost in doing so. Sure, it would be bad for future revenue, and the players who've already bought them would be pretty upset about it, but again, it's a switch, a yes or no. On the extreme end, you have Belgium, which outlawed the sales of loot boxes entirely because they ruled it as gambling. Personally, I think that's fantastic. But in my opinion, it's really not far enough. In a lot of things we do on a day-to-day basis, the things we enjoy and take for granted were likely made off of the backs of someone who was manipulated or mistreated in some way. Unfair wages and labor practices in other countries and the sort. And in this case, my enjoyment of this massive game that's ever changing with new maps and new weapons and new characters is going to be primarily funded by what the industry calls whales and super whales, along with a lot of people who will end up spending a few hundred on it without even really realizing it. And unlike the phone in my pocket, I don't really need Apex Legends. It's fun, but there are other games that are either complete experiences on their own or get free updates from time to time because the developers just want to make their game better for people who play. And like I said at the start, video games are still pretty new and they're constantly changing. But what I can say for certain is that they haven't gotten the kind of regulation that they need because the practices within them are so beyond the scope of old politicians who don't understand or care about what's in them. And the publishers that make games will always be pushing the limits on what they can and can't pull while telling everyone else that they're keeping track of themselves. Did you know that in 2006, Bethesda released $2.50 in DLC Horse Armor for the Elder Scrolls Oblivion? An optional purchase in a single-player game, and people were not happy about it. Those are simpler times.